Popular history often points to the 5th century as Rome's sudden end, a collapse triggered by waves of invading barbarians. But the true struggle for the empire's survival took place 100 years earlier. It was an internal, ideological civil war that pitted Roman against Roman over the very definition of truth. In the early 300s, Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity and moved the imperial capital east to Byzantium, renaming it Constantinople. Constantine's logic was strictly political. He believed a single universal religion would provide the social glue necessary to bind a fractured, sprawling empire together. Instead of immediate unity, this shift created an immense power vacuum. The empire's ultimate battleground moved from the physical frontiers to the internal spiritual beliefs of its citizens. The church split over the Arian controversy. One side argued the Son was a created being, subordinate to the Father. The other insisted both were co-eternal equals. These theological divisions became physical fault lines, threatening to tear the empire apart. In 325 AD, Constantine intervened directly. He convened the Council of Nicaea, summoning bishops from across the Roman world to force a single state-approved consensus. For the first time, a secular politician, not a priest, was the one leading the arbitration of divine doctrine. The council established a new operational model for the state. By presiding over the bishops, the Roman emperor positioned himself as the final arbiter of church doctrine, a move that turned theology into an official arm of imperial power. The name Arianism suggests a massive, unified movement led by the priest Arius, but that coherence is largely a historical illusion. Recent research shows that Arius left behind no school of disciples and was not considered a particularly significant theologian by the people of his own time. The conflict was actually driven by Athanasius of Alexandria. He realized he could weaponize the Arian label as a ruthless political smear. Athanasius grouped a wide range of diverse political enemies under this single heretical banner. By branding his rivals with a rejected name, he could justify their exile or destruction. This wasn't just a religious debate, it was a calculated political strategy. Theology had become the most effective weapon in the imperial arsenal. When Constantine's son, Constantius II, took the throne, he secured his power by slaughtering his own family line to eliminate any potential challengers. Constantius was a pragmatic strategist. He focused on consolidating the wealthy East while maintaining a cautious defense against Germanic tribes and the Persian Sassanids. To maintain internal discipline, he aggressively promoted a specific Arian theology. He used tools like this gold solidus to circulate his image and his state-mandated faith to every corner of the empire. He routinely ignored the previous consensus of Nicaea, exiling bishops who stood in the way of his political goals. Constantius II proved that in the 4th century, the personal will of the emperor could unilaterally rewrite the state's religious soul. The empire faced a sudden reversal when Julian, a survivor of Constantius's family purge, became sole ruler. Julian hid a deep-seated hatred for the Christian establishment that had killed his relatives. He was secretly a fervent devotee of traditional Neoplatonic paganism. Once in power, he immediately renounced Christianity and attempted to force the state back toward the old gods. His persecution was tactical. He issued an edict banning Christians from teaching classical literature, aiming to isolate them from Roman culture and professional life. In his most pointed move, he attempted to rebuild the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. He wanted to physically disprove Christian prophecies that claimed the site would remain desolate. It is a striking irony. Julian was using the exact same autocratic, centralized power built by his Christian predecessors to try and erase them from the empire. Julian's reign ended as suddenly as it began. He died from a spear wound during a failed campaign in Persia after only 2 years as Augustus. Without the emperor's personal enforcement, his pagan revival collapsed almost overnight. Julian's actions had a consequence he never intended. The pressure of his persecution forced fractured Christian factions to unite against a common enemy. In his attempt to dismantle the church, Julian inadvertently solidified its hold on the Roman world, making its dominance irreversible. By the end of the 4th century, the Roman state had undergone a transformation that separated it entirely from its classical past. The results are clear on this map. power and wealth have shifted permanently to the east. The empire is now Greek-speaking, exclusively Christian, and centered in Constantinople. Rome did not simply fall. It evolved into the Byzantine Empire, a state built on the architectural and religious foundations laid during these 4th century conflicts. The legacy of this era was the permanent fusion of church and state. It proved that in an empire this size, whoever controls the narrative of God